saying, all the adversity I've had in my life, all the troubles and obstacles have strengthened. You may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you. Today in her third speech, Get to the Point, Ginny hopes to inspire us by speaking of a few people who have taught her that no obstacle is insurmountable. Here is Ginny with her speech. Where there is a will, there is always a way. Ginny.
I'm going to tell you right here, right at the start, at the very beginning of my speech, that I never want any of you to ever, ever give up. Pretty broad, right? What exactly do I mean by that? Give up on what exactly? Life? Something like that. I've also got to tell you right here, right from the start, that life sucks sometimes. It absolutely does. But it's okay, because we're here, and we can't be anything more than just that, no matter what obstacles life puts in our way. I have two of the most amazing parents. Oh boy, here we go, some segue, right? I know you're all thinking, here we go with another run-of-the-mill story about how swell someone thinks her parents are. But there's more to it than that. I grew up in a home with two disabled parents. My mom is an amputee who was born with spina bifida and has been wheelchair-bound for most of my life. And my dad was a juvenile diabetic who was very ill through most of my childhood. By the time I was 12, he'd had strokes and heart attacks, a kidney transplant, and actually lost his leg.
Wow.
But the one thing that my parents were really great at was pushing through and doing whatever it took to get life done. When I tell people that I grew up in a home with disabled parents, I imagine that they automatically begin to picture my childhood as one of absolute servitude, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. The truth is, I was pretty lazy, and my mom is the best housekeeper I've practically ever met. To this day, she gets up every morning and vacuums and mops that house from her wheelchair.
Wow.
When my brother and sister and I were growing up, my mom did everything that any more physically capable parent would do, and more. And so did my dad. Even though my dad was forced to quit working when I was about 9, he had the zeal for life. And he loved even the simplest things, like going to work as often as he could, working in his wood shop, and just getting out and hanging out with people. The fact that he was in pain, that he was ill, that he probably should have been home resting or sulking, probably never occurred to him. Because what made him feel better was participating in life. You'd think that once both of my parents were in wheelchairs full time, that getting things done around the house would have been more difficult. But that wasn't the case. I remember a tree, a fantastic old year tree that lived just off the back porch. It was fantastic, but it was dying, and my father decided that the tree needed to come down, and he was just the man for the job. Now, knowing that my father was the single most accident-prone man on the face of the planet, my mother insisted on helping by tying herself to the tree with a rope so that she could guide the tree as it fell. There my parents were, in the backyard, in their wheelchairs, a rope and a chainsaw. And I know it sounds like I'm getting ready to have a very tragic ending, but no. Down that tree came, and it didn't take either of my parents with it. My mother has always lived a life that was the epitome of one make-it-work moment after the other. Just because she had one leg and spent most of her time in a wheelchair or on crutches didn't mean she was any less capable of living a life just like everyone else's. If you've ever been on crutches, even for a short period of time, you know how difficult it can be just to get from point A to point B. But imagine carrying a tray of food, bags of groceries. Imagine vacuuming, doing the dishes, raising children, going to work, being pregnant, and doing it all while on crutches. My mom did all of that. Why? Because she could. Because nobody ever told her she couldn't. And I think because she always kind of thought that people expected that from her. My dad was very much the same way. I'm sure in part from watching my mother all of those years. I think they were married a good long time before it even occurred to him that she was a disabled woman. And how awesome is that? that my dad had going for him was his ability to remain optimistic no matter what bombs were dropping around him. A friend of mine recently explained to me a person that he thought was very lucky in life. He could be walking down the street, pianos falling out of windows behind him, and he would just keep going, completely oblivious to the bad that was happening behind him. My dad was very much the same way, but he was unlucky. So he'd be walking down that street and pianos would be falling, but a piano or two would probably hit him.
Oh.
And my dad would just stand up, brush himself off, and keep going. This year has been pretty stinky for me. Although I realize it's ephemeral and this too shall pass, I'm a full-time employee, a full-time student, a full-time wife, and a full-time daughter of an amazingly capable disabled mother. And in March, I had major reconstructive foot surgery that left me unable to walk for nearly 3 months.
Oh.
So I spent the next 3 months on crutches and on a knee walker, my saving grace. And all of that took me to work 40 hours a week and to class 12 hours a week. In April, my mother ended up in the hospital and then an extended stay facility for nearly a month. So I spent all of April driving back and forth between here and my hometown of Melbourne and doing everything there I could to help out as much as I could. So all this happened, and I was tired, and I wanted so much just to quit. Drop my classes for the semester, quit work and hope for the best, crawl into a hole and pray for it all to be over. But I didn't do any of those things, because what kept running through my head were my parents and the ability that they had to keep going no matter what. So life is hard. It sucks sometimes, but we're here, and obstacles are just obstacles. There's always a way around.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.